So welcome everyone to our third Women in Manufacturing and Engineering Day. I'm Shannon McGhee, Director of Community Impact and Engagement at mHUB, and I'm so thrilled to virtually see you all here. We are so excited to bring this event back, even if virtual, this year, which is such a momentous year for energy, momentum, and focus on diversity in all industries, but specifically in manufacturing and STEM fields. I couldn't start without thanking my amazing team and the larger member community at mHUB, many of which are watching this together as we speak. More than 50 cutting-edge startup founders and engineers proving that this is the moment for hard tech in our event space watching us live. Hey, mHUBians. And also, hello to the students on the line. Special shout out to Infinity MST High School in Little Village. Bring on the questions. We hope you are energized about your future in STEM. Now, we may be virtual, but we have an exciting program for you. A Fireside Chat with Jennifer Scanlon, President and CEO of UL, a visionary and transformative woman leader in the field. And UL has been an early partner of mHUB, so we are so thrilled for their support. You'll hear us discuss why your moment is now, and we're talking to all of you, women and minorities on the phone. You see Jenny's bio, but it's helpful to mention that Jenny found her way into manufacturing as a consultant and was later hired by her client, the innovative building products company USG, to lead implementation of an ERP system across the North American 70-plant network. She moved on to CIO, head of strategy, president of international, and chairman of the company's global joint venture with the Australian company Boral. In 2016, she became president and CEO, leading the company until it was acquired by a private German company. In 2019, Jenny was named president and CEO of UL, which she calls her favorite, best job ever. She's often asked to speak about loving math, being an engineer, and how the world of manufacturing offers rich career opportunities for women. Jenny and I are going to have a virtual fireside chat, which will enable us to cover a wide range of topics. You'll hear her talk about some of her favorite mantras, like do the math, make your own luck, and the reciprocity of mentoring. If you have a question for Jenny, please enter it into the Q&A box, and we'll get to it as soon as we can. I promise we are going to leave so much time for questions. So Jenny, welcome, and thank you so much to the UL team for being one of mHUB's earliest and most fervent supporters. And of course, happy Manufacturing Month.
Thank you. It is such a pleasure to be here, and I really wish I was in person with everyone. I just get so much energy around just being with people who are passionate about manufacturing and women in manufacturing and women in engineering. And before we get started, I want to share the honor. I mean, you gave a nice introduction for me, but let me introduce you and mHUB to our audience and some who may not know you or mHUB. It is an exciting place, and it's a place where innovators have access to unparalleled resources and state-of-the-art prototyping. There's a lab, there's a microfactory, there's networks of industry experts, there are mentors, there's a robust manufacturing supply chain. You've got active investors, you've got a comprehensive business and leadership and technical support. It's a magical, magical environment. And it's a new organization. And in just 4 short years, mHUB has supported more than 450 member and alumni companies. And each year, mHUB works with more than 1,000 innovators on skills training and business development. And Shannon, I know you were part of the team that worked on the original vision and the plan for mHUB when you were at World Business Chicago. And in January, you were named to this role of Director of Community Impact and Engagement, which was a new role for the organization, focused on creating more access and opportunity in manufacturing entrepreneurship for people of color and for women. Shannon is leading mHUB's commitment to make diversity, equity, and inclusion a core abiding strength of the technology and manufacturing sector. And she was named to Crane's Most Notable Women in Manufacturing in 2020, and is also a proud Chicago Urban League Impact Fellow and Ambassador's Board Member for the Chicago's Children's Choir. That is just a terrific, terrific leader to have here. And Shannon, as we go through this fireside chat, you're part of this. because your job speaks to the opportunity that enriches the manufacturing industry with this diverse talent that we have on the line and who are connected to people on the line. And I think that these are the types of initiatives, the type of connections that make us more successful. And I really believe it's one of the unique elements of the Chicago business community and the way in which we all support and help each other and create those connections. So let's get started.
100%. You don't have to tell me twice. I'm so excited for our conversation. So let's get right to the title. Why do you say in manufacturing and engineering, and particularly to all of the women and people of color on this line, why do you say that your moment is now?
There's a couple big reasons for that, and they're interconnected. Some positive and some challenging. The positive is you think about manufacturing, and to me, it's never been more exciting. When I was at USG, we used to talk about, how does technology replace some of the dull and dirty jobs? And what happens is a lot of the manufacturing is, behind the glass, behind computer screens. There's a lot that goes on around data and analytics. And it's fun to watch stuff being made. And I'm going to tell a quick story. I have two daughters, neither of which yet are in manufacturing, but we still have time. My oldest turned 23 today, and our younger...
Happy birthday.
So my younger is minoring in architecture. So, they both have a great math background. But I remember when I was at USG and we had launched a new sheetrock product that was 30% lighter and 20% stronger than anything on the market. And Home Depot was, of course, one of our first partners to get it on the shelves. And so I drove the girls in Evanston to the Home Depot right there in Evanston, and because I wanted to see it. It was really exciting. And we got there, I'm like, look at that. Look at those end tapes. Look at, I was seeing, who was checking it out and pricing. And my older daughter said, Mom, all those conference calls, all those meetings, all those late nights, and be cooler if it were shoes. My response was, well, maybe it would, but you manufacture those too. And I think that that's, really the neat thing in all of this is seeing the products of a manufacturing environment. It's fun. And I have my daughters well-trained to drive down the street when they see USG products, even though I left there 2.5 years ago, they'll still take pictures and send them to me. And now that I'm at UL and our UL logo with the red UL in the circle is on just about every electrical cord out there, plus any equipment that you see. If you're walking through a manufacturing plant, you need to look for that UL logo to make sure that you're safe. It's exciting. It is really exciting to see the fruits of your labor. So what I'm going to say is the challenging part, what I find frustrating is when I was in college, the number of girls, women who were studying math or majoring in computer science or engineering was greater than the numbers today. We've actually lost ground. And I find that a little discouraging because these are fun jobs. It is fun. We're going to talk about doing the math. It is fun to do data analytics. It's fun to watch things being made. So, this is where if you are trained or interested in math, in science, in data, manufacturing is the place for you.
Absolutely. I think that it's also intimidating, right? And there's your daughter who's in architecture, there's this symbiotic nature between design and math and data. I think that has a whole world of opportunities and creativity and making things and innovating. And I think sometimes it gets left behind in talking about STEM, right?
It can. Well, tell us about, back to how do we pull people in? Your role in diversity and equity and inclusion at mHUB, really, it's very symbolic. I mean, you've decided, mHUB has decided the moment is now to develop and create programs to increase access and opportunity for both underrepresented participants in manufacturing, as well as underrepresented innovators and investors. So tell us about why now and your role.
Absolutely. So I think it's important to say that we're on the heels of a really critical period in economic recovery. We need to ensure that we focus on equitable growth now so the divisions we've seen historically are not exacerbated as we move forward and invest in building back better. We're still a relatively young organization, and we know that what we've built works to accelerate early stage physical product companies and innovate with small and medium-sized manufacturers. But what we've learned is that we need to reach further upstream. The question is, how might we take ideas to business propositions at the earliest stages, just when you've sensed a problem? And now is the time, with all this energy and funding around the American Rescue Plan, talk about building back better, and this national recognition of racial and gender inequity from both the public and private sectors. You talked earlier about problem solving in math and STEM, and the inherent focus of engineers is to solve complex problems. Entrepreneurs share that role, building solutions that ultimately disrupt industries and solve those big problems. And when I think about diversity in the space, for us, for mHUB, it's not only about being more inclusive in the solutions that we are developing, but also about ensuring that we are solving a broad set of problems that we may not even sense with a homogeneous innovation sector. And you said it earlier, in manufacturing and hard tech, it's all about making things. And we have the opportunity to make more things that benefit a broader set of the population and make them right here in the Midwest. UL is such a big part of that. This creates jobs and wealth for women and people of color. It has an outsized effect on the regional economy with strong pathways for the workforce of tomorrow and opportunities across the education spectrum. A workforce that will ultimately better resemble the city of Chicago and the Midwest.
Which is a real opportunity.
Absolutely. It's the vision. So I'm so glad to have other visionary leaders like you helping to drive in that direction. So you had a focus on math and science early on, which made you different. How did you work through that, particularly as a teenager?
Yeah, it's funny because I didn't feel that I was that different. I loved math. And my father was a math teacher. And as I mentioned to you earlier, Shannon, unfortunately, my father passed away in the last week. And one of the neat things, there's always upsides, I guess, when you're celebrating somebody's life. And what I found is there was a posting from my father taught at my high school. He math teacher, high school, 5 decades as a teacher. And out on Facebook, in the first day that his obituary was out there, within 6 hours, there were over 70 comments from former students talking about the impact that he made on their lives and how he made math simple and fun and interesting. And people who said, I hated math and I loved your dad's class. People who said, I kind of liked math, and because of your dad, I became a math major in college. And that is the power of, being different, as a girl in math who was supported by somebody who didn't care, that I was a girl. He expected the same from me that he expected from my younger brother, who's a chemical engineer. We were both very strong math students. And it's not always comfortable, to be the one that's, kind of the geek in the class. But when you have support, and you have support from a parent or a teacher, or the other kids around you, because my friends, the top 10 girls in my high school, my senior year, top 10 students, all females, most of us went into a math or science career. So it's I think when you find somebody else like-minded, it's okay that you're different, because there's some strength in numbers on that.
100%. And thank you for being here. And I'm so sorry for your loss. Sounds like your dad made a real impact.
I would have wanted me to be here, especially since there's students on the line. He would have been disappointed if I hadn't.
And I know that he inspired so many students, and then you inspire so many students. I'll call out to the chat from Terry. How do we bottle your dad's cool, fun approach to math to keep it going?
I'll tell you, I'll give a perfect example. So his opening his opening geometry lecture, postulates, theorems, talked about, what can you prove and what can't you prove? And the story was always about our dog hearing the potato chip sack rattling, is how he would put it. And, he could be sleeping anywhere in the house and somebody would open up that potato chip sack and it would rattle a little and zoom, the dog was there. Did he need proof? No, it was postulant. And that's how and those were the types of ways that he, made it real and made people think about this. And I think at least 10 of those 70 comments were about the potato chip sack. But that's, we were talking offline, Shannon, the power of storytelling, the power of making math real, the power of making engineering problems real. I'm going to use the phrase magical again. I used it about mHUB, but it really can inspire people to not just want to learn, but to engage and to make it a way of life.
Yeah, absolutely. So on that thread about making math real and continuing that spark, you spoke at the UN International Women's Day and you urged young women to do that, to do the math. So why are you such an advocate for math instead?
And I'll go back to my daughters. I remember when they were little, I used to always say to them, there's no problem out there that can't be solved through math. And there was one day my daughter was in the back seat of, the car and the seatbelt was stuck and she was crying because she couldn't get it undone. She said, I'm stuck and you can't solve this with math. And I looked at her and said, it's actually laws of force and acceleration, and we're going to push harder. And so, okay, that's physics, but yes, we can't solve this with math and we're getting you out of the back seat. But I think that's, one of the things that I love is this power of, the fact that you solve a piece of a problem and then that leads to the next piece of the problem and that leads to the next piece. And it is, I quote the movie or the book, The Martian, a lot. I like the movie because it's Matt Damon and he's fun. But the book was great. And, and that's what he says. You solve one problem and then you solve the next. The other thing I love about math is sometimes when you can't solve the problem, you think about it a different way. And you can get there. And I remember there were so many times on different tests that I forgot the formula. And, these are back in the days where you had to memorize every formula and you didn't have calculators, they didn't let you use them in class or, they didn't have the super calculators, like I had in business school. But, and you'd think, okay, I don't remember that formula, but I know that it was based on these premises and I could piece it together again. It's one of the things I use the phrase degrees of freedom a lot, the mathematical concept of the number of choices that you have. And I always use, to get to 100, you got 0 plus 100, you got 99 plus 1. You got 98 plus 2. You got 50 times 2. You got 25 times 4. You can multiply. You got 200 divided by 2. I mean, there's so many different ways to get to the answer of 100. And those are just integers. I mean, so don't even get me started. But it's that's the power of this is when you have those fundamentals, you can think about problems in so many different ways. And so I often, in particular, you hear a lot about young girls who are, and I don't know if it's as much this generation, but I think it is, certainly in my generation, it was like, well, do girls really do math? I remember when Barbie came out with the talking Barbie, and you pulled the string and it was, I don't like math. And, they got
really,
that was in the 80s, I think. And Mattel had to pull that one off the shelf, but
yeah, real fast.
Yeah. But, when earlier this year, when you all did International Women's Day, we hosted a program that featured a film that was called Pioneers in Skirts. And the trailer of the film featured 2 little girls who were making some simple robots. And they were told by somebody as they're making these robots, well, as girls get older, they don't do robotics. And these little girls looked aghast. Like, what do you mean we don't do robotics? And it's that power of suggestion and support. And so, I think girls have the same way boys do, a natural curiosity about the world around them. How do you keep that relevant to what they're going through in their lives? And I think it's up to, mothers and sisters and aunts and grandmothers to keep that interest in science and math alive for these little girls. And you see it play out in business. I had a mentor, a CEO, who would say, get into operations, stay on the operational side, because you'd see a lot of times women gravitate toward positions that are functional positions, rather than that full-blown, and not that functional positions aren't stressful, but the stress of owning profit and loss, owning the P&L, handling, operational challenges, is real. And I think women are well suited to handle those challenges. But unfortunately, if you don't get that experience, you get overlooked when it comes time to get the top job. So, one of my advices is, if you want to be a CEO, take those operational jobs and take that P&L responsibility. But no matter what the role is, functional, P&L, operational, math is important, and it's foundational to everything that is done in business.
100%. And that has been showcased in your career, right? I mean, you started with USG as a consultant, and most of your clients were actually in the insurance industry. Then you were assigned a new client, USG. And I'm quoting what I've read about you here. I heard you say this before. You worried that if the client saw your nails, he'd know that you had never hung sheetrock. But that's not what happened. How did you know it was the right fit? And how did this showcase what you were just giving us advice about, taking on those operational jobs?
It was interesting. I was at a small consulting firm. I had left IBM, joined this smaller firm founded by a woman, Debbie Bricker, mostly ex-IBMers. So most of us had, this great training and deep tech background that IBM really provided. I'm sure they still do. I left there in 1994, so I don't know, but I'm guessing they do. And what Debbie's mantra was, operations improvement. And you've got to just, think about what is that, what processes are happening, what's going on, and how do you make them better by putting the customer first. So the translation from all the work I had done in the insurance industry, which was really around focusing on customers and what's the process and how do you break it down on the sales and customer service side. And that's really where I had a lot of expertise in process. How do you break that down in a changing environment, as customers' needs were changing? And so USG, when I showed up and realized, well, they weren't asking me how to reformulate sheetrock. And what they were asking was the fact that the big boxes, Home Depot and others, were changing the landscape of the construction industry. Do-it-yourselfers were changing the landscape. Consolidation of distribution was changing the landscape. The influence of architects and general contractors and builders was changing the nature of the business. And what they were looking for was advice on how to structure sales and customer service, both frontline staff as well as the technology to support that, to evolve in this changing industry and stay leaders. Well, that was relevant to what I knew how to do. And so that was really my introduction into manufacturing. And of course, then the first thing you do on any consulting project is to start talking to customers and finding out what they think. So I did that, and we went out and visited a number of customers. So I started to see job sites and distribution centers. And then we visited some plants to understand the other side of customer service, that when a customer placed an order, what happened, what worked well, what didn't, when were expectations met, when weren't they? And you get into a plant, and I always say, my best days, if you get me to a plant or a UL to one of our labs, it is just a great day to see how all the pieces come together, to see, just what that looks like and feels like. It is just fun. And so I'd come home and I'd talk about it, and then I'd do more research and I'd study more about it. And in addition to having a strong math background, I actually had a very strong chemistry background. My high school was very strong in math and science, and chemistry just happened to be something I loved. And making sheetrock is a lot of chemistry. So there was, really just a kind of a perfect fit for, again, those natural interests that I'd had as a child, to then have the opportunity to join a company that made money off of those things that I thought were fascinating. So my friends started calling me the sheetrock queen. I was still in consulting. They'd ask, when are you going to go work there? And I had an opportunity in 2003 to join and seize the day. I was very happy that they wanted me.
So that's basically one of your mantras, right? The one that I really find that resonates with me is make your own luck. What does that mean? And how did that apply to this job, to USG and now to UL?
Yeah, it's that concept of, luck comes when opportunity meets preparation. And one of my all-time favorite mentors, and we still work together, Dom Danessa, used to say, prepare. Proper preparation prevents poor performance, were his, 5 Ps there. And if you're prepared, when opportunity knocks, you're ready. And so the preparation could be, for me, all of the work that I had done, at IBM, going above and beyond and learning how these technical pieces fit together. Joining Bricker, the consulting firm I was at, and, asking to take on some of these tougher clients, and learning from those. And when Debbie called me, and again, I was sitting at an insurance client down in Texas, and these were back in the days of landline still. We didn't, I'm in my hotel room talking to her on the phone on a landline. And she says, well, you're going to go on the sales call at USG. Well, at the time, a big insurance company was USF&G. And I said, you mean USF&G? And she said, no, USG, look it up, and hung up on me. And that was back in the day where you didn't have the internet at your fingertips. This was 1996, I think, or 1997. And so, you'd have to call somebody in the research department and say, okay, can you fax me like 10 articles on USG? Tell me what you can find. And here's the hotel fax. But being prepared, you didn't walk into that sales call not having a full history of anything you could get your fingertips on. And I believe that today. If you're going into a meeting with somebody, do your research. It's a lot easier today. You can find out a lot about them. You can find a lot about the topic. You can find a lot out about the company. And it gives you that element of, people engage when they feel that you're prepared and you care. And when you're prepared and you care, those opportunities come your way. So that's where I say you make your own luck because you're prepared.
So true. And something I've seen in my career too, just digging in and really learning the subject matter and believing that you can do it. Staying one step ahead has really, has really shaped my path as well. So another,
I'm going to jump in and ask you a question. Because you've got a background in grassroots communications, and that takes a lot of preparation, and you do a lot of campaigns. So how do you tap into the experience that you have as a partner with leaders across the city to really create this connective and inclusive ecosystem and, make sure that the city's prepared to seize the day?
Sure. Yeah, a non-traditional path for sure into manufacturing. But there's been a thread of grassroots and communication throughout my career, but really specifically focused on connecting people to critical resources at the community level. So in the first stage of my career, it's really focused on healthcare and access to healthcare. Was a trained navigator, assisted in the rollout of the Affordable Care Act, with the governor's office focused on how do we get messages out through community-based organizations and connect folks and enroll them and build trust in this big new scary thing. The second half of my career has been really focused on economic development and access to capital, answering the questions of how might we catalyze businesses at the earliest stages and build trust in communities to solve problems at a neighborhood level. So this has really given me a unique view at the opportunities we have as a city to work together to better serve business owners and aspiring business owners on that community level. There are a wealth of place-based organizations throughout the city, many of whom have been mHUB members and mHUB partners since the beginning. So as we think about how we drive equitable access to entrepreneurship, manufacturing entrepreneurship, The answer is in investing in these partnerships and doubling down, building connective tissue between programs and organizations, and connecting to collaborate on pathways rather than duplicating. So the skills that I learned in community building, relationship building, and communications are so central to the work that I do every day in working with old partners and new partners to do hub and spoke programming to reach broader audiences, to build trust, and to focus on the human building a business, and how we might build trust and help support and meet folks where they are.
Well, I think when you really think about those key elements of that grassroots, that building the trust, the getting out there, I think there's a natural connection into then the mentoring piece that I know we want to talk about.
Yes, so that's
me, but I know it is, but because I'm a huge believer in it. And so before I talk about mentoring, I want to hear about your perspective on it.
Yeah, mentoring is so critical. And we talk about it all the time, but as a leader, I didn't actually build a formal mentor relationship until this year. I've always had advocates. I've always had folks who have supported me. I've always looked to mentor others. But I think a couple of things on that. One, anybody can be a mentor, which I know aligns with the way that you think. Two, mentorship can be formal and informal, and it's about bringing people along, being their hype girl, and helping to strike that balance between comfort, safety, psychological safety, and stretch with your peers, with your direct reports, with your leaders, so that you create that space where folks can continue to reach and grow in everyday little projects as well as big ones. So you talk about the reciprocity of mentorship as one of your mantras. So tell me about what you think it takes to be a good mentee, and what role have mentors played in your career?
Yeah, and I'm going to reverse that. So the roles that mentors have played in my career, I always say I had a lot of mentors who didn't know that they were my mentors.
Yeah.
I had, now one of my earliest mentors was my aunt. She was a senior executive at IBM, and she's more like my older sister, and we spent a fair amount of time together. So I just, I observed what she was going through, and she would give me advice. So that was really nice. But I found myself, in consulting, I'd be in a room with a client and think, oh, that person's got their act together. I'm going to, pay close attention to the types of questions they ask, or how they comport themselves, or, what they do in different situations. And so I was always kind of observing. So there are a lot of people who have no idea that they were my mentor. And one of those I think about all the time is Valerie Jarrett, who many of you know. She was in the Obama administration, and she was on USG's board. And I was a corporate officer, and I would sit in the boardroom during meetings, and I would just watch, and you'd hear different board members ask different questions. And I was always fascinated, again, by the way that Valerie approached things, because she was a different perspective, a different voice than a lot of the room. And I thought, from watching her, I just remember thinking, okay, be brave and ask the question that you want to ask. And don't worry that other people may already know the answer or may not think that it's relevant, because you've got a point and you're going somewhere with this. And all of a sudden be like, bam, that made sense that she was asking. So, so I guess that's my first message to everybody is don't feel like you have to find yourself in this formal mentoring situation, because there are people all around you that you can pay attention to, and they can become your mentors without them even realizing it. But when you do, feel like you want a more formal arrangement, I always tell people to go into it thinking about how it's reciprocal. And by that, I mean, the people where I've spent time being a formal mentor, I've gotten as much out of it as they have. And it's those things, and one of the challenges as a leader is the more you get promoted, the less people tell you. So if you have somebody
Yeah.
that you're mentoring, it's really true. I mean, it's unbelievable. You think,
Yeah.
I'm approachable. People tell me things, not even close. So now you've got to find ways to get people to tell you, because they're not going to tell you what they used to tell you when, you were sitting side by side with them. And so one of the things that I've used mentoring relationships for is as I'm giving advice, I'm also asking questions and trying to get some advice. Like, well, this happened in the company. How did you feel about that? Or what did you hear about it? Or, what do you think? And it becomes a really helpful two-way street, and, hopefully prevents leaders from becoming disconnected and out of touch as well. So, I think, there's just a lot of great things that come out of mentoring relationships. And, you learn a lot by watching, you learn a lot by listening, and you learn a lot by asking.
100%. That resonates so deeply with me. My degree was in journalism, so I'm trained as a reporter, and I find myself doing the same things, just observing and watching and learning from everybody around me. That's how I came up in my career, and I still learn so much from all of my colleagues today, which points to a greater point, right? Everybody can be a mentor. Tell me a little bit about that. Dig in there.
And I'm even going to go back, since I have so many stories about my daughters, and they'd probably kill me if they were on, but, both of them, one played sports and one was in competitive dance. And I remember our older daughter, when she was in competitive dance, was not named captain of the team. And she was really disappointed. And she was disappointed because, she felt like, she was the one who, people always called to say, well, what time are we supposed to be there? Or which, costume or uniform are we supposed to wear? Or, who's the, whatever the question was.
Yeah.
And I said to her, listen, there's formal titles and there's informal. And you don't have to have the title to be the leader. And I'm going to say, you don't have to be a senior executive to be a mentor. And it was a great lesson for her, because she did in many ways become the de facto, leader mentor to her, cohort without ever getting the title of team captain or whatever it was. And so I think, in particular, I think back to, I talk about the 10 girls in my high school who were in the top 10, we hung out. And I think in some ways, we were competitive with each other, which fuels a healthy competition. But we also, in some ways mentored each other. Like, hey, I didn't get this problem, or I don't know about this. And, in college, I started out as a math major, and there were only 2 of us. We were in the liberal arts program in the honors math class freshman year, 25 guys, 2 women. And we both ended up at IBM and, stayed connected through the years. Unfortunately, she passed away a few years ago. But having that relationship and that friendship was so powerful and so important. And, I think about all the times, I walk through the hallways, I talk to everybody. I just chit chat. It drives my kids nuts. They're like, oh my gosh, to get you from one end to the other. Or I've been on lab tours. I was out at our Fremont labs a couple of weeks ago. I went up to our Canadian labs a couple of weeks ago, and they've got me on these tight schedules, and I'm like stopping and talking to everybody. Like, tell me what you're doing. What's on that computer screen? What's this project? Tell me. And people love that. And, I love it because I learn. But a little bit of attention and interest from a friend, from a colleague, from, your first line manager, your project manager, anyone, it goes a long way. And especially for people who are really junior in their career, to feel like somebody's paying attention and giving them that word of encouragement. This is a world today, particularly post-pandemic, people can work anywhere. They can live anywhere, they can work anywhere. Those opportunities are everywhere. Having that connection to someone that they feel like cares about them and is a mentor to them is enormous. So I encourage every single one of you to find ways to do it, whether you're still in high school and you're figuring out how you're going to support each other through your math tests, your chemistry tests, your college applications, all of that, to the most senior people on this call. It's on you.
Awesome. So I know we're getting close, and I could talk to you for another whole hour and a half. Same here. We share that my fiance also rolls his eyes when it takes us an hour to get through store. But I'm going to ask you for the last part of our fireside, because I have questions piling up. What is the one question we haven't gotten to that you want to leave it for this part before we get to the Q&A from the students, the engineers, and the manufacturers on the line?
I think the biggest thing, is a lot of people always say, what career advice would you give me? And I've started in recent years giving everybody the advice of learn project management skills.
Oh my gosh, yes.
It sounds so simple, but having a mindset around, how do you break a project down to its simplest elements? How do you understand, a schedule? Well, first of all, the scope, your charter and your scope, your schedule, your budget, your resources, your issues, your risks, your communications plan. Those are the elements. If you master the basics of project management, and I always say there's a huge difference between the people who are box checkers in project management, that, you have a list and you're checking the box, versus the people that really dig in and understand, like, okay, let's go back. Let's read that charter again. What did we say we were going to do? Okay, where are we at? Where are we behind? Where are we ahead? Why? What are we going to do about it? How do we fix it? How do we close that issue? How do we mitigate that risk? How do we communicate that message? If you learn that, you can master anything. I'm a huge believer in it. So take project management classes, learn project management skills, and, there's formal certification. My husband is like the, best project manager out there and formally certified and all of that. I spent my life doing it. Our kids make fun of us because they're like, okay, you do realize that not all teenagers project manage the way that you want us to. And we're like, yeah, but tell us the plan. What are the objectives? When are you going to get it done? But if you start thinking that way, boy, do you become effective in business. So that's my biggest piece of advice.
I love that and would wholeheartedly echo that. Okay, so now to the questions. Get some questions going. I have a few from email. Okay. Folks are texting me from the event space. So I'll go through them. So one question from Linda. She says, first and foremost, great to meet you. What are your top 3 strategic initiatives for UL for the next 3 years? And how do they incorporate leadership development for women and people of color?
Great question. So, UL is a fabulous company. We're 127 years old. We're a market leader in safety science. And, we've just got this incredible brand and reputation. But I was a UL customer before I joined UL as CEO. In fact, USG started fire testing building products in, I want to say 1913 or 1915. So it's been over 100 years. The opportunity to put the customer in the center, I think in any company, has to be your number one strategic initiative. So to support that, we're launching Salesforce.com. We're launching an account-based management. We really reorged in more of a collaborative way so that, we've got cross-functional teams. So that's our first and foremost strategic initiative. Second one is talent. We have to attract and retain, science, engineering leaders around the world, technical skills. And so to do that, again, people can work anywhere. It's a pretty fungible job market right now. And so we've got to make sure that we've got the diversity initiatives and goals. So we laid out targets that we intend to hit both in the United States and around the world for women and people of color, and ensuring that, as I like to say, it's a tops down and it's a bottoms up. So you've got to have senior leaders that people look at and say, oh, I could, somebody who looks like me is in a job like that. So you've got to have the tops down. But if you don't build that talent from the bottoms up, you've got to recruit, at colleges that have diverse talent. You've got to ensure that then you've got the internal training and development and mentoring. So that's one of our strategic initiatives, is piecing this all together from a tops down, bottom up, because we're not as diverse as we aspire to be. And then I would say our third piece of our strategic plan, I actually have 5 points to it, so I'm picking the top three. Customers, employees, and then leadership in business that, you can do. It's always a challenge. Your team's got tons of ideas and tons of enthusiasm, and they want to go do a million things. And to pare things down to their simplest elements. And for us at UL, it's, we are leaders in a large majority of the businesses that we're in, but we need to have a path to leadership in every single one of those businesses. And, a lot of it is how you define leadership and how you define that business. But focus and win in that space is my third message to the team. So we've laid out a full strategic plan called the Alpha Strategy, but those are the big three: our customers, our talent, and leadership in every business.
I love that. One question here from my friends in the other room, of members who were clearly stealing this question from an event we did last summer. So shout out to Pete Wilkins, who came up with this question back then. It's clearly popular. If you had to pick your Mount Rushmore of women leaders in manufacturing and STEM, who would be on it?
What a great list.
I know, isn't it a good one?
Okay. First of all, I'm going to say Grace Hopper, who invented Cobalt.
Okay.
I met my husband in advanced Cobalt class, so I have double reasons for respecting her. But, it's still used today as much as it's an old programming language. So I need 4 women in manufacturing.
Or leadership.
So my next one, I'm going to go back to, when I think about the people who have mentored me, I got to throw Valerie up there because she's just great to me. Okay, so Valerie Jarrett. I am going to say I need 4. I think her name is going to elude me, but there's this woman who created the robot Jibo, I think it's called, who I just find fascinating. And I don't remember her name, but it's such a cool product, JIBO.
She's up there.
Yeah. And then I think I'm going to wrap it up. And I think I don't know if she's still alive, but when I graduated from the University of Chicago, it wasn't Booth yet, but Graduate School of Business, Hannah Gray was the dean. And again, shaking her hand, getting my diploma from her. I think she may have been the first female member of the Commercial Club of Chicago, and I'm the first female chair of the Commercial Club of Chicago, so I think she'd have to be on that list.
That's awesome. A total curveball. So great question of our members. Okay, here's a question from a class that's watching in a STEM school who gets their high school diplomas and also their associate's degree. If you're eager to get into the workforce, quickly.
Somebody put in the chat, it is Cynthia Brazil. That's exactly who created it. And she is fascinating. So
thank you. Thank you for the assist.
Thank you for the assist.
Great assist. Great, Mount Rushmore. So this is from students gaining their high school diplomas and associate's degree at the same time. What advice would you give to women and men who are interested in getting into the field right away? Should they go into a job in manufacturing now and work their way up? Or should they reach for the 4-year degree? What are the different pathways that you see for folks in manufacturing today?
There are a lot of different paths. And I think, some of it depends on, kind of your ultimate aspiration. One of the neat things that used to exist that I'm seeing a return is companies helping to pay for people's college educations. And so, if you're in a position where you're interested in manufacturing and you find a company that is willing to support, you to do both, to get some work experience and go to school at night. IBM paid for me to get my MBA at night. It was a great perk. So I'm encouraged when I read more about companies who are doing this. It's something that we're discussing at UL. Which we have a program, but in broadening that again and attracting talent. I don't think there's a specific path. I can think of examples of people that have gone all different ways. And so my advice to anybody is to do what feels doable to you. What feels doable time-wise, what feels doable just capacity wise, and what feels doable financially. I've seen people be successful in all paths and, do what makes sense. So, and
we're at this age and totally crashed.
That's the essence of the question is, kind of on the which path. There's lots of different ones.
Sounds good. Okay, another question from mHUB members. For entrepreneurs and engineers, if you had, and also one of the entrepreneurial topics that we learn is fail fast, right? Fail fast, pivot hard.
Yeah.
So if you had to think back on your career about a time when you failed and learned for a couple, what are those big moments for you?
Yeah, you introduced me as, having joined USG to roll out an ERP system, Oracle, across 70 North American locations. And we had an experience where we were a year into the project and realized that we had, you gotta love this, my team walks in, we still laugh about it. We call each other on April 28th every year, because it was April 28th. And they called me.
It's like a holiday.
Yeah, it's like a nightmare, but it's one of those days you never forget. Lives in infamy. So they pull me in and they're like, we miscalculated by $1 million. I was like, okay, this project's $115 million, so not great. And they're like, per location. It's like, per location. We have 70 locations. Like, yeah, we miscalculated by $70 million. What it's going to take. So $1 million per location. My immediate reaction, the project manager in me is, okay, you had to get this wrong. Like, let's go back, let's look at the problem. Let's, how do we double time? What can we do in India? What do we, where do we shortcut? Where do we not need equipment? But the bottom line was they were correct that the amount of engineering and networking that was needed to make sure that the system had the right amount of latency and everything else, security. We were short $1 million a site times 70 sites, $70 million on a $115 million project. Okay, if you ever think you're going to get fired, it's that moment of walking into your boss's office and telling them that. And in fact, that you're really failing when you think the best possible thing that could happen to me is that they fire me. Because I don't know how I'm going to fix this. And the good news is I had leaders who, I went in with a plan. I didn't just go in and go, oh my gosh, we're short $70 million, hand me $70 million. I went in with a plan and said, listen, we've got some choices. We can stop the project and get the benefits out of, the 20 million that we've spent so far, and here's what I think. We could try to pare it down. We could do this, we could do that. Now my boss, who was ex-McKinsey, consulting partner, didn't just, take my, here are your choices. We spent a couple months really digging into and bringing in some outside help to say, okay, which of these choices is the best one for us? And we made a good choice. And the CEO backed us. he said, listen, he said to the board, this was an error in estimation, not in execution. And the reasons why we were doing this project are still very valid, and there's still a payback, and I think we should continue. That was one of the worst board meetings of my life, because I really did feel like I was being publicly fired. But when you make when you're in that situation and you fail, you got to succeed the next time. And we knew we weren't going to miss that budget or those deadlines, and we got it done. And to this day, 15 years later, and that system's been in place 15 years, it has benefited that company in so many ways, and absolutely has paid for itself, probably times 10. So
April 28th, the day
April
will live
28th.
in infamy. What a story.
Yes.
But also the trust that your board had in you, in that space to be able to say, okay, error in estimation, not an error in execution, and then really dig in and recover, I think is such a great story.
Yeah.
That resonates.
Trust in a team, like no person could do that alone. I would say if I was out on a limb by myself, they wouldn't have trusted me. But we certainly, you got to pull in the right people when you're failing fast.
Well, that feels like a good question to end on, wrap up, because I know you are so busy, and we are so thankful to you for taking this time with us, our members, our network of schools, and all in the greater community to end Manufacturing Month, celebrating women and diversifying the field. I have a can of questions. They're still rolling in. So what I'll do to anybody who didn't get a chance to get their questions answered on the line, thank you so much for joining us. And we'll go ahead and follow up with you in email. And Jenny, if it's okay.
Send it over, I'll answer them. I love to write. We'll send it around to anybody who's interested.
Sounds good. So to wrap up, happy Manufacturing Month to everybody. We are at the 28th. I cannot believe it is November. A huge thank you to you, Jenny, for joining us for this 3rd annual Women in Manufacturing Day. I wish it could be in person. We hope to host you over here soon at mHUB on Chicago and Sangamon. We are so inspired by your journey. You're so supportive of UL and all that they've done to support these early stage entrepreneurs. And to wrap up, I just want to say a couple of things and announce a few exciting initiatives at mHUB. In the spirit of reaching earlier and really digging in to turn early ideas to businesses, we are launching our first Empower Cohort, which focuses on supporting and powering business ownership at the earliest stages for underrepresented founders. We're piloting the curriculum. This first cohort is focused on women. So keep an eye out on our website, mhubchicago.com, at mhubchicago, on all social media. We'll be opening those applications soon. It is a free 6-month membership, hands-on support, wraparound programming to focus on the earliest stages of business development and prototyping, and then also some small grant support to power those early stage businesses and to take ideas to scale. So with that, thank you again, Jenny. It's so nice to meet you. I can't wait to meet you in person.
You too. It was a great hour.
100%. I wish we had so many more. So thanks, everybody. We hope you have a safe and fun rest of your day. We'll see you next time.